Hello and welcome to Naivety Gaming. I'm your host Matt, and this is the 50th episode of Cheap Weekly Thrills. If you haven't already, please make sure to like and subscribe. We've got a lot of great content coming up, like the Cheap Weekly Thrills A Year in Review, where I go through and pick out some of my personal favorite and your guys' favorites of the best Cheap Weekly Thrills games that we've picked out throughout this last year. This week is the week of Tuesday, September 11th, 2018, and the game that I've chosen for this week is none other than Slither Link. Slither Link is a kind of mathematical intelligence game which consists of a checkerboard and a number in the checkerboard. When solving the problem, you must use the clues provided by the numbers to connect an uninterrupted closed loop on the checkerboard line. So long story short, as it said, you've got kind of like a grid in using the childhood game where you try to block off or you draw a line around a box or connecting lines, and then you try to finish the box before your opponent does so you can grab the points. It combines that game with Slither, or Snake, or whichever game, I think it's called Snake, where you try to create a line, but in alternative events, you would actually rather to connect to yourself rather than not. So in my mind, I find this game like a really interesting, again, it's yet another puzzle game by, I believe it is Zkolibre Studio. My apologies for absolutely butchering that, but that was my best attempt at it. But yeah, I think Slither Link is a really cool game that combines multiple games that we've known and loved in the past. And I think you guys will enjoy it as much as I have. So let us jump right into it with Slither Link. Hello and welcome to Slither Link. So as I jump into things, let me give you a quick little tutorial per se on how this game works, because the minimalism that the developers have created with this game, between the options, very simplistic controls. Unfortunately, there's not like a full screen, so that's why this resolution may look a little bit weird to you guys. But for as far as the tutorial goes for this, so most of these, actually all of them, will appear kind of like in this, as they described, a checkerboard pattern. And your goal is to, there will be a number, and you'll have to figure out how many lines that you can create on each side of said number. So if there's one, then that only means that one side of that four-sided square can be lined in, as I'm going to term it. So with the 0, nothing, absolutely nothing can be touching it. So the really interesting thing with this game is when you get some blocks like this, you have to really think around, how am I supposed to work around this box? So that's my solution. Definitely a little bit different, as you probably could have done in this area, you could have gone up and around and done the 3 there and not had that line there and then come up and around. But this game gives you a lot of options and variability as far as how you want to solve your puzzles, which I find very, very cool and very unique. In other ways, in this kind of map here, there's only really 1 or 2 different ways to go about it. Maybe not as much open-endedness as some other levels have been. It's just the one thing that you really work on is trying to line up everything so it works really nicely. Once you get into later levels, if you don't keep that in mind, you'll have like a random line here, to fill in some boxes, and you'll have a random line over there, and then you'll have a generic outline, but it's really difficult to be able to really connect everything together once you get very much so further on. I was going to say this is level 3 of the 5x5 grid, so I'll just briefly show you guys how big and how intense some of these different levels can be. I had tried to record this earlier, and to be quite frank, I was not prepared to the vastness of, you know, even just the 7x7. My brain got into the mode of working with this 5x5, but even just moving it up a little bit really increased the amount of time that I spent on this. So if you can imagine increasing the time that much just by adding, you know, this kind of area, and then we go up to a 10x10, and then a 15x15, a 20x20, and a 30x25. I mean, these levels are just phenomenally huge. And for someone who has a lot of time on their hands and is looking for a nice challenge, I really think this game will be very entertaining and very fun for you. As you can tell, I'm getting very good at these 5x5 levels. But let me tell you, some of these are very tricky, even in the 5x5 grid. And I'm already struggling to find where I want to go about things. So as you saw earlier, I had my version of how I wanted to solve it, and it turned out that the generic rough line was not what I needed. So let me do that, and there we are. So if we cut back to a little bit ago, you can see how I really just filled in the line to what I thought would have been, and the really big key about this game is to make sure that you're very flexible with how you solve some of these puzzles, because once you get like a line like this set in stone, and then you realize that it may not be the correct line, it's very difficult to go back later and try to fix something like that. So it's, if you're not prepared for something like that. But if you do want to fix it, you can go back and unclick all these little guys, or you can just blatantly restart the level. But what I meant by having a big problem going back and fixing it later is you'll be spending a lot of time unclicking some of your lines. So just make sure that you're very open-ended or open-minded with how you want to solve these puzzles. Because already I have encountered a little bit of a problem here. There can only be a 3-side on that one. So as you can tell, I was able to strategically move around that minute problem. There we are. Level 4, an astounding 1 minute and 18 seconds, and I can suppose that many of you in the future are really going to be, once you complete all of these different levels and you're looking for an additional challenge, I would assume that a lot of you guys can eventually start speed running once you understand how the levels are, once you really memorize how the levels are as far as their layout. So already, here's the most common problem that I've run into, where you got kind of like this spiral pattern, and then you go, well, now where do I go? So it's trying to figure out how to avoid some of that. So I was able to kind of go around that. Kind of solve that problem there. But here's one of our more interesting issues, is that you've got this little 2-side here, but I already have my outline pretty much perfect. So, how are we going to incorporate this? I didn't realize it was that simplistic, but, you know, if you've got a line over here and you've got a line here, maybe you can find a way to slope it on in. You know, I'm not... Unfortunately for you guys, I don't think I really want to attempt trying to do a 7x7 because the essential principles are going to be the exact same as a 5x5, but I do not think I'm currently in a functioning mood to be able to effectively commentate and complete one of those maps in a sufficient amount of time in a review. So I'm able to get this here. We've got those two there. Could probably do one of these here. Get rid of that, get rid of that. We definitely can't get that 3 to put a line here and do something like that. Because first, that wouldn't make sense. And secondly, we're trying to figure out how to get the 2 over here. I think that's the closest thing that I can come up with. So I want to do... There we are. So, maybe I'll just try this one last one to see how this works. If it doesn't go too well, then I might just stop early, unfortunately. I do really enjoy this game. It's just one of those games that's not very easy to try commentating while doing. So I got that problem there. I'll switch that up. That's also a problem, so we'll move that there. So that is the only kind of solution that I'm able to come up with at the moment. Already we've got a problem about this line not really going anywhere. So what do we do? Okay, so we have our own box. Our own little box here, but... Well, I think for the moment being, I think I will call it quits because, again, I am not really able to effectively commentate and do this game anymore. But that doesn't mean that it isn't a fun game, that there isn't great music, which may be a little bit repetitive if you're playing for extended periods of time. It's just a very difficult game when you get onto it, and I think that would be a very enjoyable game for some of you guys that are maybe not so much casual gamers. A lot of these games that we have been reviewing in the past are definitely geared towards casual players, and I myself in most cases am very much so a casual player. So those of you that are completionists, that are looking for a good challenge, I think Slither Link is going to be a great game for you guys. So that was Slither Link by Zkolibre Studios. If you like this content, make sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel. We have a lot more cheap weekly thrills coming on up, as well as some various gameplays with a wide variety of cast members from the Extraneous Zone and Naivety Gaming. If you are an indie developer who is looking at releasing a brand new game in the next couple of weeks, make sure to send me an email at matt@theextraneouszone.com. I'd love to get in contact with you and review your game. So again, if you're curious what my email is at, it is at matt@theextraneouszone.com. I may have said "at" a little bit too many times there, but that's okay. So that was the 50th episode of Cheap Weekly Thrills, and I hope to see you guys in the 51st episode, where we'll again continue to review lots of fun indie games at a very low price of under $5. Until then, take care, guys. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.